Hello, and welcome to the Gonzales Mitchell Show. I'm Clay Mitchell.
And I'm Patrick Gonzales.
And this evening, we have a very special guest. It's Senator J.B. Jennings. Mr. Jennings was a member of the Maryland House of Delegates from 2003 to 2011. He's been a member of the Maryland State Senate since 2011. He was a Senate Minority Leader from 2014 to 2020. He's a member of the Air National Guard, a farmer and a businessman, and a former volunteer firefighter. JB, welcome to Gonzales Mitchell. What's happening?
Not much, gentlemen. Thank you for having me.
Well,
Just
thank you
kind
for
of counting down
coming.
the days. What do we have? 48 hours, or just about 2 days
Yep.
until
Until
the
the
election's over.
big, till the
Patrick, how do you think
blockbuster is over.
how do you how do
Yes,
you think
sir.
the turnout's been in Maryland? I heard we cast 100 or a million votes so far.
Well, and I heard, what did I hear? 70 million already cast or something? What do I say? I say, yowza, yowza, yowza. Tuesday is going to be a lollapalooza. That's what I
JB,
said.
what do you see out there in the country? What's going on as far as you can tell?
Well, I think people they're at this point they're tired. They want the election over. I've spent some time in Pennsylvania. I've been going up there with Bob Ehrlich. He's been, the Trump campaign's had him up there helping, and I've been up there assisting. A couple times I've gone to locations. I did door to door, did some phone banking. It is, without a doubt, the most polarized election I've ever been through. People either they hate Trump or they love Trump, and unfortunately it's tearing people apart. My actual family, I found out tonight, I've got relatives that are fighting with each other over the election. I just think this country's bigger than this election. We just need to get it behind us and move on, whether whoever wins. But it is going to be an interesting Tuesday and late Tuesday night into Wednesday, depending on how long it takes for these results to come in. So I just know people are ready for this thing to be over, no matter what side you're on.
I feel
JB, we've known each other quite a while. You know how much I love politics, just like you do.
Mm-hmm.
But my friendships, my family means so much more to me than any political campaign, any political issue. And I have a very simple philosophy. Some of my friends are for Vice President Harris, and some of my friends are for former President Donald Trump. As for me, I am for my friends. And I hear you, brother. It's just, let's get this over.
People they cannot handle somebody else's view. They're very short sighted. I've got one relative who has been fighting. She's a conservative, but she's voting for Harris because of the abortion issue. We've gotten into deep discussions on that, and it's just, you can watch the anger in her face as she talks about it. But then I had a friend that ironically I served with in the Guard this morning. We were talking after roll call, just in the hallway, and he is telling me how his wife and he aren't speaking right now because she's voting for Trump, he's voting for Harris. And I'm like, took a double take, like, what? I thought you were conservative. And he's mad over Trump over some other stuff, but he said, no, I'm with Harris. And it's just, people cannot get beyond it. They call it, the Trump derangement syndrome, whatever you want to call it. It's just, they're so focused on him. And I tell people, because I hear this thing about, democracy's going to end, or, he's a dictator. I said, he is not. Come on, people. Like, listen to what you're saying. We have laws in place. Just because he becomes president doesn't mean he becomes a dictator. We have a constitution. We have laws, and that we are governed by. That in 4 years, that person's out of office. Whoever wins the next election takes over. And it's been very frustrating talking to people because they're so short-sighted. They just go to these talking points that are so extreme, and you can't get them off of it. And I just kind of quietly say, okay, nod my head and walk away because it's not worth getting into the fights.
Yeah.
unfortunate. I've got some good friends that are on the other side voting for the other party, and we're mature enough. We give each other. It's good old fashioned ribbing back and forth,
It is.
but it's not vitriol. I know where they are. They know where I am, and it's civil. But I look on social media, and it's for some reason the past week. I know why, because the election's so close. But for the past week, it's gotten so vicious, and the half the time you can't trust what you're seeing because of AI. You don't know if it's a real video or a fake video. So
Mhm.
I'm just doing my bit. I'm voting, and I'm not engaging in that kind of behavior.
So interesting you brought up AI. I remember back during the hurricane in North Carolina, there was a picture floating around the internet of a little girl on a boat holding a puppy crying.
Right.
And as soon as I saw it, because I'm kind of in the cyber world and I've gotten used to some of this stuff with what I do, I said, that's not a real picture. That's AI. Turned out it was AI 100%, but people
Yeah.
are pushing it out there. And, and I try to tell people, I said, check the source, listen to what it is, follow up, do your own research. And, you got commercials going back and forth on every race you can think of. And I tell people, I say, campaign commercials are 30 seconds if it's a negative commercial, destroy your opponent. If it's a positive commercial, making you the greatest person in the world. I said, you got to look through that and understand what the message is, what the issue is, look at who you trust, look at how they're going to vote, look at their track records. But people just right now, they get caught up in the rhetoric of it. And you mentioned something about social media, and people ask me all the time, what's the hardest part of this job now? It is trying to do this job with social media out there, because the minute you say something, it is all over the internet. Chances are something I'm going to say tonight, somebody's going to tweet out, or they don't tweet anymore, they're going to exit out, or Facebook, and people are going to beat me up over it. And, Clay, when your dad was speaker, I had times, I never served with him, but I remember one time when he was still lobbying, I was talking to him, and he told me, he said, it was easier then because, you only had the typical news. Your 2, 11, and 13 were your news channels, the newspapers, and that was it. And that's the news that people got and they heard. Now it's everywhere, and it just makes it so tough trying to have conversations with people, because they see something on Facebook and they run with it and they believe it. And, then people post stuff, and you talk about professionalism. I'm like, I can't believe you're posting that and you're putting your name behind what you're saying, but that's just unfortunately the world we live in right now.
Yeah. I mean, on a personal level, my whole life, JB, Clay, I've had to deal with some issues. But the one thing hard experience has taught me is you cannot live your life based on feelings, based on emotion, and have a happy life. The reasoning has to come through. And yes, it is much harder to be a good citizen in this day and age, because there's so much information out there. So much of it is a deep or cheap fake, and you've got to make the effort to go, as you say, JB, research it and kind of find out what the truth is. However, if you don't do that, you're going to allow your visceral emotion to all of a sudden take over, dominate your thinking, and we're going to end up like we've ended up right now. I mean, I think all this technology ultimately is a wonderful thing, but the ironic thing is the more information, the more access to information we have, and I think about now compared to when I was a kid. It's amazing, but it's harder to get it to the reality, which is also amazing.
I call it Google University. People Google something and they think it's the absolute truth. And, you have to look at the source. Where did that message come from? Or where did that page, who published it? Is it 100% accurate? Sometimes there's too much information out there that people go to. But, we got two more days and it's over. So we'll survive. And then all the fun starts with, once the results come in and both sides claiming victory, the other one saying that this one stole it, or who knows what's going to happen. But,
who knows?
I think as much as everybody wants this over, it's the next 4 days after Tuesday, basically Wednesday through Friday, of what we're going to go through in the media of the results and what people are going to say about it, that we're going to have to put up with for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I really have. I'm sorry, Clay, you go. No, I was just going to say, I really have locked into a mentality. I'm going to deal with Tuesday night. In other words, it's going to be what it's going to be. The follow up or the fallout from it will be what it's going to be. But I'm going to assume nothing, because I'm not trying to show my extreme educational brilliance, but I'm about to give you a quote from the founding fathers. How much pain they have caused us, the evils which never happened. In other words, we can sit and say, oh my God, Tuesday night, it's going to be a dead heat, or maybe it won't. So I am really going to just sit back, wait to see what happens Tuesday night, and go from there. Clay, tell me right now, what is going to happen Tuesday night? I want to know.
I wish I knew accurately what it was. I just hope no matter which side wins, we know by 10:30, 11 o'clock, and it's settled and done. Like Trump said, it's too big to rig one way or the other. If we get into where Pennsylvania still has to hand count votes for 4 days and all this is going on,
oh my God.
JP was alluding to, the messaging on social media is going to be out there. The conspiracy theories are going to fly. Yep. And we're going to end up like in 2000, we had Bush v. Gore. And the country, like JB said, is tired of all this. I want to know who the winner is within a day or so, and we all move on from there.
Yeah.
But
what frustrates me? I'm going to say this, Clay, real quick. Yeah. Is I spent a lot of time over the last few weeks kind of doing research and looking at previous elections. And, Pat, when did they call the 1980 election for Reagan? Do you know what time?
Yeah, John Chancellor, 8:15 Eastern time on NBC, called the election for Reagan. 8:15. Right, so the polls closed.
Like 15 minutes after they closed was a little too early. But what blows my mind is 20, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, we knew by 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night who the president was, who won the election. Nowadays, we still don't know. You got ballots still coming in areas of states at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, don't we have the technology to speed this up? You got Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and I can't believe they can't push this data quicker to the, election boards. It just, in some areas we've gone forward with technology, other areas we've gone backwards. And look, I'm a guy who supports the paper ballot, where absolutely you want to have some type of, backup copy of how people voted. But the machine that tallies it, you think that would automatically be Wi-Fi to the Board of Elections, that the minute the poll closes at 8 o'clock, they hit the button tally, Z out like you do a register, and it gets forwarded out to the Board of Elections.
I remember looking at the news years ago. And by the way, Patrick, it's John Chancellor, as he pronounced it.
What did I say?
Chancellor. But,
okay, yeah, I did. I was thinking of the lady on Young and the Restless. Sorry.
No, I remember, going back to all the different elections when Cronkite and David Brinkley and all them were on there, and John Chancellor. They had the tally board up there, and states would report, and they would come in. And I don't remember, except for the 2000 election, where we went through all of this mess with, we have to count all the mail-in ballots, and then we got to do the absentee ballots and the provisional ballots. It does seem to be really complicated. And I think that leads to the frustration of the public in general.
We distrust.
Want to have the election. We want it over. Honest to goodness, if it could be with it like 1 or 2 days, have the election on a Friday or Saturday or whatever, and have it in 2 days instead of this long, drawn-out process that just, to me, is unnecessarily complicated. But I don't have a vote on that.
I agree. And the other thing is, it leads to distrust. When people don't know how the results are and they're out there, that's when people start to make up stories and panic and, come up with these conspiracy theorists. Whereas, if the results are in by an hour and a half after the poll closes, there's less, there's more trust in the system.
I think also we have made, for various reasons, we've made the system a little too loosey goosey. I guess I'm an old fuddy duddy, but I think some of the responsibility for being a citizen of this country is to make an effort to participate, to make an effort to have to vote. I'll admit, when early voting, JB, started here, I think it was the year you ran for first early voting year was the year you ran for Senate, 2010. And I was a little annoyed with it. Again, I'm kind of a traditionalist, but once I got into it, I kind of like it, just because of its convenience, and it kind of makes sense with limitations. But this whole notion of, in the old days, absentee ballots had to be postmarked by election day. That's fine when there are a couple of hundred absentee ballots and you had to have a legitimate reason. That's great. But now, with this proliferation of ways of mailing in ballots and postmarks, and as long as it's postmarked, it doesn't have to get to us till a month later. It's just, I just think we need to come up with a more simple, economical approach. And the answer to the question, JB, I think, is where there's a will, there's a way. And we've just got to collectively decide that that's what we want to do.
I agree.
And I'm with the paper ballot backup for all the electronic stuff. And just in case something happens in the transmission of the electronic data, that you have that backup there.
Absolutely.
And it's one thing in Maryland, we have early voting, but it's only a week or so before the actual election day. Some of these states, what was it, September, you could start
it's crazy.
Your ballots. I just think that's, and you haven't heard all of the arguments yet.
Exactly.
There could be something that comes up, some October surprise that, would have changed your mind, but too late, you've already mailed your ballot in or submitted your ballot. I just think it needs to be more compressed in a more finite period of time.
No, and the exact reverse of that was when I asked my wife to marry me. I mean, I wanted it to happen immediately, but she said, no, we're going to wait about 18 months. I got to learn all about you because I got some questions to begin with. So I passed through the 18 months and it all worked out. But as far as being able to vote 6-8 weeks before the election, oh my Lord. I mean, that's insane. That's crazy.
Yeah. And I think from my experience, like you, JB, we live in the country, it's the polling places around here, them, they're your neighbors and friends. There's no hanky-panky going on. If there was, boy, all the friends and neighbors would come down on whoever did that. I don't know what happens in the cities, but I would have to think in precincts, there should be a familiarity with people that, to me, just looking outside, not having any empirical evidence, everybody seems disconnected and not trustworthy there for whatever reason. And I just think that we need to come about to where people are familiar with themselves, with their friends and neighbors again. When you come to vote, there's people there that you know and trust. But it doesn't seem to be that way anymore.
There's not a lot of trust and faith in the election process right now. A lot of distrust, unfortunately, from both sides. I look at, I'm on this board that's looking at mobile voting, and there's countries, like one country's called Estonia that I've spent some time in. It's actually one of the most technologically advanced, and they actually do voting on their phone using, kind of like what's called blockchain with securing, and, you go on your phone, you can vote. It's guaranteed that it's you because of the blockchain technology and, multi-factor authentication to ensure that it's you voting. But then the way they allow it is you can actually change your vote up until the polls close. So you go back and forth to candidates because your vote doesn't get registered until the board, the election closes at 8:00, whatever time it is. It's just very interesting. Other states have been able to step up and do it. And we in the U.S., I just don't think we're there. We need to be, but again, there's some distrust, and that's the thing is we have to have. Hopefully, this election brings back trust to the American voter that we have a secure and safe election process.
That's exactly it. Electronic voting kind of makes me queasy to begin with, but I'm a digital migrant. I mean, I'm from a different generation. And if it could be proven, JB, like you said, you could prove it's you, that's the one that's voting, that's fine. I don't know about voting up until the last minute and changing your vote, but I could be convinced.
That's just
I
what
could
this
be
one country has done. And again, as I tell people, you can do bank transactions on your phone of millions of dollars. And we know the technology's there. We know the security's there. It's just figuring out how to guarantee that it is you, JB Jennings, who's casting that vote, and not somebody else who got my phone and my login and all my credentials. We're not there security-wise. It takes a little bit longer, but I think eventually we're going to get there. And that's a totally different subject we could spend another night, talking about.
My prediction is that Maryland will be called by 9:01 p.m. How about you, Patrick?
My prediction is pain. Remember Clubber Lang in Rocky 3? Clubber, what's your prediction? My prediction for the state of Maryland is, at the presidential level, it's probably going to be by 9. But what I want to know about, gentlemen, is that fascinating Senate race. What do you think is going to happen?
All right. So presidential race, I think Maryland, I think it'll be called by 8:15. You're giving it, because I think once early voting comes in, you'll see the numbers. I think they'll call the presidential race within 15 minutes. The Senate race, much, much longer. I see the polls do have her up right now. I'm holding out faith that some people are still, Hogan was down in the polls when he ran in 2014 and pulled it off. I got my fingers crossed, I hope, but we'll know until 9. I think that race, I think the Senate race in Maryland, you'll know by 9:30 at the latest.
Man, I'm with you. I have a TBD, to be determined, and we'll see. How about you, Clay Mitchell?
I think if I was to call the Senate race at this point, I think also Brooks has it. But I think that's a function of, does Donald Trump have coattails to bring in some of the MAGA constituency that he had that were turned off by what he said when he was dabbling running for president. If Trump can bring them in, I think it's a much closer race. But we'll see Tuesday night. I think it's on that one. I think it's also Brooks.
But I do want to say, I do think Maryland, we will get our votes in early, our results in early, meaning I have faith in our state. I know we in the legislature have worked hard to make sure it's a secure and, former director Linda Lamone, and now you got the new director who I have a lot of faith in. I think, Maryland, we don't usually have problems. The only delays I remember recently were, one, there was just so many people at the polls, they couldn't just close at 8:00. So because of that, they couldn't release the results or for early voting until the last person voted. And then then they did have some places where the paper ballots, they ran out. They had to get more paper ballots to them. So the court said, hey, you got to stay open until they get their ballots. But, we don't have any of this late night shenanigans that we have in other states. So I do have a faith in Maryland that we will know by, I would say, latest 9:30 on the Senate.
I agree with you. I think ever since the Glendenning Sauerbrey race, what was it, 1998, that the Board of Elections has done a great job.
1994 was the first.
1994 is got the system back to where it's a workable, trustworthy system. Yeah. I agree with you. Well, fellas, we'll find out Tuesday night who the winners of these races are. JB, I'd like to thank you for joining us. We'd love to have you back on. We'd like to have you on during session in case something comes up, which never comes up during session. I'm sure nothing controversial comes up, but we'd like to have you come back on and talk to us about it.
Anytime. Just let me know. I'll be more than happy to jump in because, I say hi, JW. I do have my son here who's been with me the whole time.
Hey, JW.
He's
excited about JW?
he's gotten involved in this, and just excited about getting this election over. But yeah, absolutely. Anytime during session you want to come on, or you want me on, if you want to talk about anything in particular, I'm here. I'm a phone call away, and we'll get it scheduled.
Super.
That's great, JB. Well, now it's time for the end of our show, and it's time to say goodbye, Patrick.
Goodbye, Patrick.
Goodbye, Patrick.
Goodbye, Patrick, and thank you, JB.
You're welcome.